Welcome back to the Pitch Pod. My name is Joe Janner. With me, my co-host, as always, Jeff. How you doing, man?
Joe, I'm doing well. Thank you. I'm excited to be here, excited to talk soccer, MLS, and we got quite a rivalry to look at for this upcoming weekend.
Absolutely. We're talking about Sporting Kansas City versus St. Louis City. This is a match that, as it played out last year, it ended up being quite the contested rivalry in that it went to the playoffs. They had to see each other in the playoffs. And I think at that point, it was a big upset for Sporting Kansas City to get through. And you got to be thinking that St. Louis City hasn't forgotten. But here they are having to travel across the state. Sporting Kansas City hosting at home. We know what Sporting Kansas City's been doing as of late. How about St. Louis City? How they been doing?
Yeah, so they've been getting by. You know, they're not tearing up the regular season like they were last year, and they're currently sitting in eighth place. And Joe, they've been drawing a lot. It's not so much that they're losing; it's just instead of getting the 3 points with the win, they're just settling with the draw. It seems like more often than not this season.
Well, I'm looking at that. I think more than anybody else, at least in the Western Conference, with a record of 2 wins, 5 draws, and a loss there for 11 points, as you suggested, or as you mentioned, in eighth, just a point and a place ahead of Sporting Kansas City. So it's a big game, right? You got to imagine. A lot of people are going to be up for this. Not only the Sporting KC supporters, but we saw a St. Louis City contingency that was more than willing to travel across the state again to support their team on the road. In fact, I think there was quite a bit more so than maybe it makes sense geographically, but probably more away supporters at Sporting Kansas City than we'd seen before.
Yeah, I think it's a big game for lots of reasons, right? They're both sitting right next to each other on the table. They both need to build some momentum and the rivalry aspect, right? You know, St. Louis probably has a bitter taste in their mouth. So, Joe, I agree. I think this is a big game for lots of reasons, and it could benefit whatever team wins. They need it. You know, eighth and ninth isn't necessarily good, so that could be a huge momentum builder, and both teams could definitely benefit. But you know, Sporting Kansas City, looking back at them, there's some things that I feel like they definitely need to improve on in order to make sure they win this game. Joe, what are some things that stand out to you?
Well, maybe we're always so critical. At least I have been lately. Maybe we'll start some of the positive. I think there is something to suggest. I think for anybody, whether you're a Sporting Kansas City supporter or you're looking out from outside, looking at what they're doing, I think it's Eric Tommy. I think that's a player there that I think it. Again, whether you're a supporter or not, or whether you're into MLS or you're not, it's a player that's worth looking in and watching. I think it has, somewhat of an entertaining aspect to it. With that being said, it almost feels like it's too much of like, let this guy go and do his thing, and everybody else kind of just watches on, right? So maybe that's part of it. That's one. And then, do we want to talk about substitutions, Jeff? Do we want to go into that?
Sure, but I'd like to piggyback. Tommy,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Before we get to that, because we could, go before we.
if you didn't catch the Sporting KC Miami matchup, Eric Tommy, 2 amazing goals. And, I think he does need to be more aggressive. And in the past, he's been more of a facilitator. I want to see him take more shots. And yeah, we'll talk about amazing goals last match. So, yeah, I agree, Joe. There's a lot of good things going on with Sporting and St. Louis. But going back to substitutions, what you were just about to mention, what we saw in the Inter Miami game was not a whole lot of substitutions. And second half, wouldn't you know it, Inter Miami comes back and wins. And a couple of things stood out to me in that game that I hope these aren't repeat mistakes for this upcoming match against St. Louis, a worthy competitor. But number one, okay, Felipe Hernandez got in the match. Good player, young guy. But because up until this match, he's only had 10 minutes of actual play throughout the season, he's not used to the pace of play. He's out there training, but training's not playing a real MLS game. And he got matched up a couple on occasions with Messi. And I mean, talk about a hard situation coming off the bench, cold, pretty much no experience this season, 10 minutes max. And then, oh, here's Messi that you have to try to guard. And I'm not saying a whole lot of game time would have necessarily prevented that goal from being scored, but that was Felipe's man that he was off. And it looked like he had trouble keeping up with the pace of play. And maybe he could have gotten there and deflected it. And we could have ended with a tie rather than a loss. So, again, I don't know if there's a whole lot that could have been done with that specific goal, but you could tell he was struggling not only with that defensive play, but some other areas of the game, offensive giveaways. And again, that just comes down to experience. He hasn't had a whole lot of playing time to improve and learn and work with his team. So, yeah, I think we're seeing some problems with not subbing earlier in the season thus far kind of happen now. And then also another thing is, that last goal of the Sporting Inter Miami game, Joe, if you go back and watch that, maybe you have, but I watched it. It's tough. It's a bad goalkeeper decision. Jake Davis didn't really show a whole lot of support. It's just bad decision making, bad game management all around for Sporting. And it's tough to watch, right? Because like you said, they're a talented squad, they're a talented team. But when you see them make these kind of silly mistakes or bad game management, it's just hard to watch. It's almost like they shoot themselves in the foot when they don't need to.
No, you said it. I'll address that because it was even in the post-game presser by Peter Vermees, something that was acknowledged immediately as being a mistake in terms of the pressure that Miami put when Jake Davis had the ball. He could have, should have, then found his way out of pressure to then send the ball long as opposed to trying to take the ball inside, lose it, trying to play it back, and then all kinds of chaos from there, right? So it was admittedly early on recognizable in real time as a huge mistake. You hope the kid moves on past or beyond that, right? I mean, you have to at this level. One game, one mistake is not your career. You go beyond and you can continue to do well. I think going back, I think you make a great point with the substitutions, not that the impact of those are not always within the moment, but they do have over a course of time a comprehensive impact on how a player or a team performs if they are being underutilized, as you suggested, and they're not having those moments and opportunities early. Now we're looking at, this will be game day 9. That was up to game day 8. If you're having limited time in a series of 8 matches, and you've seen, what you say that right, 10 minutes, how do you expect a player at any level, in any league, wherever, to come in and make an impact or do what they need to do if that's all they've seen? You said it, make a great point. It's training, it's game. They're two different things. You have players that can rise to the occasion. You have players that can thrive in that environment but then there's others that really do need to be worked in and worked up to being able to perform. And that's just not happening. That's maybe, a deeper or even further reasoning or suggestion or argument why we need to be more critical on a manager. We'll just say a man. We don't have to say the person, or we could just say in general about how important it is to really manage substitutions in the modern game, especially with them given 5 substitution opportunities within the 3 windows, however you want to phrase it, this, that, whatever. Jeff, you're laughing like I'm still talking what?
I'm laughing. You should be a politician, man. You started out with, I don't think we should be that critical. And then flip to a couple minutes later, we need to be more critical.
Did I, Jeff? I'm going to have to go back to the transcript and look at that for myself. I'm not sure that I necessarily said that. And,
okay. Right.
And maybe if I did, it's not quite what I meant. But maybe I did mean exactly that. It's finding the right level of criticism, but it's analyzing at the same time. I think that's what we're doing. That's my point. Is just finding that opportunity to analyze the situation it's a good opportunity to analyze the situation in regards to substitutions, not only having an impact in the moment in a game, but also over the course of a season. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on that.
I get it. Well, while we're looking at both teams, let's take a look at St. Louis. And, obviously their goalkeeper is amazing, Joe. We've seen him live, Roman. And they're a good team. They're well coached. Lots of resources at St. Louis. They're a fun team to watch, especially last season. My main concern with them is kind of their ability to just put the ball away, put the ball in the back of the net. And, they do have a couple strikers in Klaus and Samuel, and they're talented. They're big, tall, strong, but I feel like there's not a lot of speed on this team outside of a couple defenders and Jackson. Outside of them, I feel like, they're just not quite quick enough, not quite dynamic enough. And so maybe they might do well on set pieces with that height, but I guess that's my concern is, are they dynamic enough to get the goals they need? Or are they just going to continue to get enough to draw moving forward and be happy with that?
I mean, it almost sounds like you decided to go ahead and, the verdict is out. It's just kind of a mediocre team that doesn't do poorly, but doesn't do well. I mean, you're looking at 12 goals in 8 games versus, the 11, and like as you suggested, we talked about the 5 draws. So, but it's still early. Maybe it is something in the case of it is early. The manager's still trying to put together and figure out a few things and hoping and wanting to get more out of individual players and wanting to get more out of the squad as a whole. And that I can see where that could be okay. But I think what I hear you saying is it's time to kind of like get into it, whether it be an individual player stepping up or whether it be the team as a whole operating and performing as a squad at the level to get done, to not be sitting there, go beyond 8, middle of the table, and to do more. That we'll see. I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see that in this game on the road at Sporting Kansas City. They're going to show up. It's a big rivalry game. You're excited about it, Jeff. I'm excited about it. That's what we're talking about. We've done everything but give it a label, a fun name for this big rivalry. But maybe we'll put that, that could be something, Jeff, in the comments, right? If I may. Let's see if our audience has the creativity to come up with a fantastic name to give this picture. Or you want to go ahead and put a couple options out there? What are your thoughts on coming up with
I agree. I agree. Let the audience participate. I'm thinking some fun pun with I-70. What'd you come up with? Some Classico? What was your name?
Mocan Classico or something. I mean, I don't know. That's maybe just spitballing and trying to find something, but get a label to this. I don't know if anybody has. Maybe I missed that. Maybe I didn't get the memo on that one. Jeff, did you receive the memo from either anybody suggesting that it has an official label? If not, maybe here we are at the Pitch Pod. Put it out there. Let's get a name on this.
No memo, but I tell you what, I'm excited. This is a huge game. I think you're right. I think, both teams have been a bit cold, but I think they're going to give the fans their money's worth this week with this rivalry, the excitement around it, people traveling to see the game. So I think this is going to be a fun one, and I think the fans are going to get their money's worth, Joe. And if you're ready, I think I know what direction I want to go in, but you want to go first?
I got it. Yes. I think it would be all too easy if we're looking both based on what we've talked about and basically looking at the numbers and where this is to call it here to more than likely be a draw. I just got to believe, I think that this game calls for a winner in a sense that both are going to be in that mindset. Could use it on a couple different levels, right? A win. Sporting KC at home, I think that they get it done. I think, though, it's not going to be anything more than a 2-1 win for Sporting Kansas City. That's my prediction.
That's fair. That's fair, Joe. And you know what? That would be huge for Sporting. I think that would be a good win for them. But you know what? I'm not so happy with what I've been seeing, Joe. And, I don't know. I feel like they're making some errors that you can't afford to make at this level. And I think maybe, I'm just assuming it is early in the season, but I think maybe the team's getting a little frustrated. There's some injuries. I hope they break out of it, and I think they might later on in the season, but I think they're still kind of in a funk. And I think I think they should win this game, being that it's at home. But just given their funk and kind of how the season's transpired thus far, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw here, Joe.
That's fair. Again, I think that's, without putting a real label to it, being conservative in the sense that and I think that's a realistic analysis or prediction of what could and possibly be. It still sounds like it could be a well-contested game, and that won't disappoint, for either side as a supporter, or, along those lines. Let's see how it goes, though. I can see that happening. So you got the 2-2 draw. I got you.
That's it. And real quick, before we cut off the broadcast here, I do want to let people know Joe had a ring dinger. He nailed a Champions League prediction. Plus, he got another Champions League match right, and I was cold with my prediction. So, Joe, the official Pitch Pod Season 4 charts is currently at me in the lead, 41 points, to Joe Janner in a close second place with 40 points.
Wow, that's gotten close. Yeah, Wednesday Champions League fixtures definitely helped me out because I don't know. We didn't talk about too much the Tuesday and how those were. I mean, nobody was picking those numbers and those results, I don't think. But yes, thank you for acknowledging. I did get Bayern winning 1-0 over Arsenal to advance. I appreciate the recognition. Thank you. And it's close contest here at the Pitch Pod.
You're
Exciting
right
to see how the season continues.
You're right there. Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we hope you get a chance to enjoy this matchup. It should be fun. And till next time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what we bring you here at the Pitch Pod, please do us a favor, hit that like and that subscribe. Don't forget, we're available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Thank you everyone, and keep pitching out there.
In a game, the round ball, round posts, anything can happen.